In a universe full of ideas, we draw lightness from the dark to a place where opposites attract. Right meets left, positive touches negative, sparking an explosion of truth. Because politics makes strange bedfellows.
Evening, everybody. Welcome to Strange Bedfellows. Welcome back. I'm your host, Lori Spencer. This is episode 6 of Strange Bedfellows. And man, I've got an amazing show on tap for you guys tonight. Some of you may already know our guest if you keep up with the news of the war in Ukraine with Russia. This man has been well known to people who follow that situation for many years, including myself. His name is Russell Texas Bentley, and he's a Renaissance man. He's a jack of all trades. How would I describe Russell Texas Bentley? Well, first of all, I would describe him as a Texan. First and foremost, he's a Texan. He's a musician. He's a soldier. He's a cannabis advocate, an activist, philosopher, and a communist, which is why I think he's going to make a perfect guest on Strange Bedfellows. As you guys know, the concept of this show and what we do here is we bring together people that are political opposites, people who might otherwise be fighting with one another. And actually, we find out that when we sit down and talk to each other, that we have a lot in common and we get along beautifully. And Russell is one of those people that I share a lot in common with. And I'll tell you a little bit more about him if you've never heard about Russell. He was born in Texas in 1960, served in the US Army in the 1980s. And, you know, he just always had an interest in politics and history. And after the Maidan coup in Kiev in 2014, and then the subsequent war that erupted, particularly, I think it was the Odessa massacre that motivated Russell to do something. Even though he was an American, he was sitting over here in the United States watching all this unfold on television and said, these people are Nazis. They're butchering these innocent Russian people. I have to do something. And so he traveled there and he signed up to join the fight on the side of the Russian separatists. So it's a really fascinating story. He has been living in Donetsk, I believe, since 2014, and he fought in the defense forces of the Donetsk People's Republic, the DPR. After serving a year in the Vostok Battalion and the Spetsnaz Battalion, he made the transition to war correspondent and human aid volunteer, which is what he does now. I believe he is now retired from the battlefield, but he's here with us tonight on Strange Bedfellows, and I am pleased to welcome our friend Russell Texas Bentley. Good morning.
Thank you very much, Lauren.
It's great to have you.
Glad
What
to be
time
here.
is it over there in Donetsk?
Well, it just turned about 3 o'clock in the morning here, Saturday night. So
the witching hour.
Well, you know, B.B. King wrote a song about 3 o'clock in the morning.
He did.
It's a good one too. So I think I'll be able to stay up for the next couple hours to talk to you.
Well, I'm so glad you're here. And the way we usually start out the show on Strange Bedfellows, because it's a show about political opposites who agree more than they disagree. I'm a libertarian, longtime libertarian. I guess these days you'd call me a Kennedy libertarian because I'm working on the campaign of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., trying to get him elected president. And of course, you're a communist. And I have many friends who are communists, and we frequently have them here on the program. So I like to start out just by learning a little bit about you and your journey politically. You know, when you were growing up, I guess you were born in Texas. Were you born in Austin or Brownsville?
That's right. I was born in Austin, Texas on 38th Street at the, whatever, I can't even remember the name of the hospital, but right there on 38th and I-35.
Oh, Brackenridge Hospital.
Brackenridge, that's right.
Yep, Austin was my hometown for 25 years, a big chunk of my life. So we have that in common. And I think we have a lot of friends in common down there in Austin. So, there was always a community there that I recall when I was in Austin of communists. People think of Texas as this conservative red state, but there was always, particularly in Austin, we call it a blue city in a red state. It's always been very liberal, but there was a strong community of socialists and communists there.
That's right. Politically aware people. I'm very, very proud to be from Austin, Texas. I can tell you that when I came here in December of 2014, I met a guy here the day after I got here who had been born in Moscow. It was a Russian family. His family moved to the United States in about the year 2000, something like that, late 90s maybe. And they moved to Austin, Texas. And so there's two guys that grew up in the United States that have fought on the good guys' side in this war. And they were both spent time from Austin, Texas.
How strange is that? Isn't it great when a Texan meets another Texan? I know when I travel anywhere I go, somehow we find each other. It's like a magnetic
it was really amazing
pole.
because I was in the Sparta Battalion recruitment office, and I didn't hardly speak any Russian at all. I was there by myself. I'm there with like maybe 25, 30 other dudes. The sergeant comes in. He speaks for like 15 minutes in Russian. I don't understand a word of it. And then from the back of the room, I hear this guy say in English, Javier, I'll tell you what he just said here in a minute. I'll translate for you. And I went over and I said, hey, can you translate for me too? And I had like some old work clothes on, from some old Carhartts, maybe little holes in them, kind of worn out, stuff like that, work clothes. And this guy asked me, he says, you're not Russian? And I'm like, no. And he's like, where are you from? I'm like, from the States. He's like, what state? And I'm like, I'm from Texas. He's like, me too. And then comes, what town? Austin. Oh, I'm from Austin too.
Get out of here. No way.
And so, we gave a big hug and like all the guys are clapping. It was,
wow.
It was straight out of a movie or something. It was quite an amazing crazy situation.
I was telling you a little bit before the show, and I want to recap that story here for our viewers. When I first heard of you was around 2015 on Vice News. I just happened to be watching Vice News for some reason one night, and I thought I knew what was going on in Ukraine, but I was getting only one side of the story. I was getting the propaganda from the mainstream media, and Vice News, of course, does some pretty biased reporting. But I'm glad I found that. And I'm going to play a little bit of the segment that they did about you as a profile of you, as the story of an American who decided to go fight for Russia. And, they tried to make you look like you were crazy, like you were nuts. And the more I listened to you, I thought, I like this guy. I really liked everything that you said. And you kind of red pilled me. That was my red pill moment when I started to question what we were doing over there in Ukraine and what the situation with Russia was really all about. And that's when I started to dig and learn the truth. I didn't know about the Nazi problem in Ukraine because my media wasn't telling me. And the first time I ever heard about it was from you on Vice News. So I just want to roll a little bit of this and show folks, this is from 2015. So this is a few years back when you were still active in the fighting forces there. But I think this is a great way for our viewers to get to know you, why you're there, why you went there, and why you stay there today.
We're out near the airport in Donetsk, and we're about to meet a volunteer fighter from the Vostok Battalion, which is on the separatist pro-Russia side. He's going to tell us how we ended up fighting alongside the men here. So Texas, we're in the Donbass, in Ukraine. How did you get here?
I've always been interested in politics. Started reading Che Guevara, Ho Chi Minh when I was about 12 years old. Really, communism seems like a just way, a good way. So, I mean, and I know from history that it takes communism to defeat fascism. So I'm a communist. I'm here to fight fascists.
Did you think you'd ever end up serving in somebody else's military? When you open the American passport, it says you can lose your citizenship for fighting for another country's army. It says right there on the second page.
Yeah, I'm not fighting for another country's army. I'm fighting for freedom and justice. I'm fighting against fascism. And the United States government is a fascist government these days. It is. It truly is. And so I fight fascism. And if the United States is fascism, then I fight the United States government.
Tell me about how you got involved fighting for the separatists, because most people in the West actually support Ukraine, and they see this as a Russian invasion of Ukraine's sovereign territory.
But it's not a Russian invasion at all. It's the people of Donbass saying, no, we're not going to have Nazis come here and tell us how to live. I'm fighting against fascism. I'm fighting against the genuine Nazis in Kiev, the Nazis that say Heil Hitler, that love Bandera, who is a terrible war criminal. And those are the guys in the Ukrainian government right now. And the United States government put them in power, and they're criminals. They're psychopaths.
I mean, I was in Kiev just last week, and you don't see parades of people marching down the street with swastikas.
Not every day, but they do.
I mean,
they do.
I've been to a military parade as well in Kiev, and I didn't see any Nazi paraphernalia at all.
Well, that's because the US PR company that Poroshenko has hired has told me, keep the swastikas out. It looks bad on American TV. But they're there, man, and you know that they're there.
Well, I've seen a couple of individual soldiers from the volunteer battalions sporting actual, Nazi sort of symbols. I've seen one guy wearing a swastika. I've seen one guy with a sort of SS on his hat. But what I haven't seen is fascist or Nazi ideology as part of the official ideology of the country or the army as a whole. I think that's exaggerated. There are individual skinheads, but this uprising in the East, it's primarily a Russian nationalist uprising. So it would seem the opposite of communist ideology. The declared goals aren't leftist, they're not communist. If anything, they're more right-wing. So how does that sit with your ideology?
Well, I haven't seen a lot of right-wing ideology with the guys that I've been working with. Sud Bremeni is a communist organization, and I am in the Sud Bremeni military unit here. I mean, and I don't think it's so much right-wing, it's more just self-defense. This is their land, their homes, their families. Nazis from the other part of Kiev are coming here. I mean, when the fucking Nazis first came here and the people stood in front of the BMPs and tried to stop them with their hands, and the guys would shoot them or run over them.
I was there.
Yeah.
They weren't Nazis. The guys who came with the BMPs were just regular Ukrainian military conscripts.
Well, I've got a message for those Ukrainian military conscripts, and it's this. We're fighting brothers against brothers here. The Ukrainian military conscripts work for Peter Poroshenko. Poroshenko works for Obama. Obama works for oligarchs, American oligarchs. So you're fighting for American oligarchs. What we need to do is Ukrainian army, join Donbass army, go to Kiev, clean out the Nazis.
А с чем боретесь здесь, конкретно в Донбассе?
С укропами.
Как бы со всеми украинцами или какими-то конкретными?
Тут нет времени разглядывать, какой он там хороший, плохой. Они в меня стреляют, я в них. Все просто. Мы вот с Техасом РПГ, первый, второй номер. Так что пока мы здесь, на передовой, ни один танк не проскочит.
А как служится с американцем?
Это очень, как сказать, если со стороны войны сказать, то это очень человек отважный. Так. Я вот учусь у него там ставить мины, там растяжки, он мне всему учит.
Откуда вы знаете, что он не американский шпион?
Да по нему видно.
Sud Bremeni na vajna, Sud Bremeni na vajna, Суд времени не победа, иди нахуй, Обама. Правый сектор это педераста. Правый сектор это педераста. Правый сектор это педераст. Он сосет меня автомат.
К нам чаще всего приходят, у нас есть испанцы, есть итальянцы, вот Техас американец, да. А те, которые ощущают высочайший уровень неблагополучия в собственной стране. Они там себя чувствуют некомфортно, когда они видят то, что происходит, когда они видят, как там опускаются люди. Они понимают, но не всегда они это могут объяснить, что эта война, она идет и в их стране тоже. Мы считаем, что то, что сейчас происходит, это фактически идет какая-то перекройка мирового порядка. То есть мы считаем, что идет столкновение двух проектов. Первый проект, тот, которому мы противостоим, мы называем его черным проектом. В основе этого проекта лежат фашистские представления. Ну, известно, что в Соединенных Штатах Америки, во Франции, в Германии существует образование, доступное как бы для всех, уровень которого опускается. Это превращает их в ту самую слизь, превращает их в людей, которые не в состоянии даже осознать свое положение, вот, и не в состоянии оказать какое-то сопротивление тому, что с ней будут делать. Ну и есть целый ряд людей, которые не хотят превращаться в эту слизь. Есть страна. Эта страна называется Россия. Вот Россия сейчас этому сопротивление оказывает. А наша конечная цель – воссоздать Советский Союз в исправленном, в исправленном и лучшем варианте. Мы называем это СССР 2.0.
What can you tell me about your views of America? What kind of a country is America?
It's a beautiful, beautiful place. I love it very much. It has a fascist government right now. I was born in 1960. Things were nice back then, but since maybe 1980, it's been downhill. You know, the government in the United States is a criminal government. It doesn't represent the people of the United States. It represents the oligarchs and the corporations.
So why not fight Nazis there instead of coming here to fight other people's Nazis?
Well, Nazis are Nazis wherever they are, and if I fought them in the United States, I probably would have been fighting by myself. You know, they would have said, "Oh, some crazy guy." You know.
No, Russia's a country that's not without its problems either. I mean,
know that.
Many people would say that it's an authoritarian dictatorship as well. And the movement here supports Russia and is supported by Vladimir Putin. So where do you stand on supporting a cause that could bring the kind of authoritarian system in Russia to eastern Ukraine?
I don't really see Russian as being that authoritarian. As for Vladimir Putin supporting Novorussia, to the extent that he does, I thank him seriously. If we want to talk about authoritarian dictatorships, I think there's a much more authoritarian police state in the United States than what I saw in Russia.
But you don't see the leader of the opposition in the United States being gunned down in front of the White House. And just a few weeks ago, the most prominent opposition figure in Russia was shot in front of the Kremlin.
The Russian government would not gun him down in front of the Kremlin. That's a pretty obvious false flag, if you ask me. I mean, it's the CIA said, "Hey, we don't need this guy anymore. Let's kill him and blame it on Putin."
What do you think about liberalism? Do you think Europe and the West are getting too liberal? Because some of the other members of Sud Bremeni, the unit that you're from, told me that unhappy with the way homosexuality is being promoted as they see it in Western countries, for example.
Well, you know, I'm not gay, but I'm completely unprejudiced against gays. I believe that people have a right to love whoever they want. They should be able to marry whoever they want. But I can see the point of the guys here.
Определенное количество людей, чисто генетически, тяготеет больше к нетрадиционным способам удовлетворения своих сексуальных инстинктов, но их не больше 5%. А когда сейчас на Западе таковыми становится большинство населения, ну, если не большинство, то значительная часть. Ясно, что это делается искусственным способом.
И для чего вот популяризируется гомосексуальная культура?
снижение прироста народного населения. Нефть скоро закончится, газ скоро закончится. Об этом же крики были.
А как вы считаете, Техас, который поступил в ваши ряды, он это понял?
Но мне представляется, что он это понял.
Well, you're not the first American fighting in this conflict that I've interviewed. I actually talked to a guy codenamed Franco, Mark Paslavsky, who was fighting on the Ukrainian side in the Donbass battalion. And he said a lot of...
the guy that got killed, right?
The guy got killed in Ilovaisk.
Fucking.
Well, he said some similar things to what you're saying about wanting to fight the oligarchy. He said part of the reason that he was fighting for the Ukrainians and that he participated in the Maidan himself was because he wanted to see the oligarchic corrupt system that has existed in Ukraine be brought down. So it's interesting to hear two Americans fighting on two sides of this conflict talking about the same problems.
Well, except for the fact that he was completely wrong. If Poroshenko is not an oligarch, then what is an oligarch?